back to Monster Kid Radio return listeners, and if you're brand new to the show, welcome to the podcast that celebrates the classic and sometimes not so classic genre cinema of yesteryear. My name is Derek M. Cook. I'm your host and producer of Monster Kid Radio. This is episode number 33. Now, normally we have an episode every Tuesday and Thursday of the week. However, this week is going to be a little different. So I mentioned this on the last episode of Monster Kid Radio. I'm actually going in to have my gallbladder removed tomorrow on Wednesday. So I'm not going to be in podcasting shape. I was planning on having enough content edited and ready to go, but Sunday night I was in a really bad car accident. Now, obviously I'm talking to you here now, so I mean clearly I'm not incapacitated yet, but yeah. This week has been all kinds of fun. I've had a very monstrous past couple of days, and not in the good way. So this week on Monster Kid Radio, you're going to get one episode, and I'm incredibly sorry about that. But I'm also very thankful, because Scott Morris and Tracey Morris recently attended HorrorHound Weekend. And while they were there, they attended a Super 8 film festival. We've got a report from HorrorHound, and they're going to break down the film festival and talk about what they saw, how they saw it. Very interesting bit of, well, I guess it's Monster Kidism, because a lot of movies were only viewable in the home through this Super 8 format. And I think this would have been a really neat film festival to go to. HorrorHound Weekend, I haven't been in a couple of years. But the one thing that I've learned about all of these horror festivals is that the best thing about them is meeting your friends, meeting people that you've met through podcasting, through online communities, things like that. It's the one time that we're all in the same place, and it's just a blast. And I miss seeing people at HorrorHound Weekend and the other conventions that I used to go to. That said, I would have really liked to have gone to this Super 8 Film Festival. It sounds incredible. Now, Scott and Tracey will break down the specifics about who put this thing together in their segment. And again, big thanks to those two for doing this episode of Monster Kid Radio this week. Now, my intention is to be back personally next week, maybe even with 2 episodes going back to the traditional Tuesday, Thursday format. But it depends on how I do after the surgery and what life is like sans gallbladder. I'll come back at the end of the show to wrap things up after Scott and Tracey, right after this.
Hammer Film Productions began in 1934, and after producing almost 200 films and television programs, the studio is still releasing and re-releasing new and classic film titles. 1951 Downplace is the podcast that brings you the story of the great Hammer films, one movie at a time. Here are your hosts, describing what Hammer means to them. First is Casey.
Hammer means the beautiful and glamorous women of Hammer horror, the engaging storytelling, and amazing period films.
Joining him is Derek.
Hammer means the incredible work of actors like Peter Cushing, Christopher Lee, and even Michael Ripper. The gothic storytelling, the incredible music, and the set pieces.
And finally, here's Scott.
A podcast about Hammer? I don't want to be the one to cross Tony Stark.
This boy has a lot to learn. Join our hosts as they make their journey through the Hammer Films catalogue and discuss each film with critical opinion, historical facts, production notes, and other information about these classic films. 1951 Downplace can be found in iTunes or their website, www.1951downplace.com.
Oh, so it's not Justin Hammer.
1951 Downplace, the home of Hammer Films discussion.
Hey there, MKR listeners. This is Tracey Morris.
And her husband, Scott Morris.
And you may know us from the Disney Indiana podcast. We've both also made appearances here on Monster Kid Radio. And Scott is formerly known as Need a Nickname Scott from Mail Order Zombie.
Tracey and I had the opportunity of attending the HorrorHound convention in Indianapolis. And one of the things that we got to do, which was new for us, was attend a couple of Super 8 film festivals.
Now, I was vaguely familiar with Super 8 films from when I was a kid. One of my cousins was into animation and filmmaking, and he actually had his own projector and would bring mostly short subjects like The Little Rascals or Laurel and Hardy shorts to show to the kids during family holidays. But it turns out a lot of feature films were edited down into the Super 8 film format from the 1930s till almost into the mid-1980s.
Now, for those of you like me that weren't that familiar with the format, there's two different lengths of these Super 8 films. There's the 200-foot, which makes a film that's about 8 minutes long, and then there's the 400-foot length, which makes a film about 16 minutes long. Now, a lot of film companies would put out condensed versions of their films in this format that consumers could buy and bring home and thread through a projector and watch, on a wall or a screen or whatever. Now, they would just distill the movie down to its most important parts and maybe add some narration that would bridge the gap and tell the people watching the film what was going on.
Another option was sometimes the movies would be split up into chapters so they could be shown on multiple reels, and we saw a couple of examples of that as well. These films were presented by Tom Stockman from We Are Movie Geeks, and he's actually out of St. Louis, Missouri.
About once a month, he does a film festival at a local bar in St. Louis. He's also done special theme nights at different conventions across the Midwest. He did a Vincent Price film festival around the time of Vincent Price's 100th birthday in St. Louis. He's also done Hammer Films film festivals. And the first one that we got to see was a Ray Harryhausen film festival.
Now, he decided to go chronologically for this one, and we started off with Mighty Joe Young from 1949.
Now, the problem that we had a little bit was the room there at the convention that they put us in had windows in it that faced west, and since this was the evening, the sun was shining through the windows, even with the blinds closed. The room didn't quite get dark enough to be able to watch films in this format very clear, especially Mighty Joe Young being black and white, and the print that he had was somewhat dark. Some of it was kind of hard to see that there was a monkey on there, but it was a lot of fun to see exactly what was cut down. As with most of the Harryhausen films that we saw, most of the good stuff that was left in for the Super 8 was most of Harryhausen's work.
Now, I had not seen Mighty Joe Young before. I've not seen the full version. I've seen bits and pieces. So seeing it here in the Super 8 format really makes me want to see the longer version.
And that's a recurring theme. Most of these that we got little bits and tastes of, we want to now go and see the full versions. Now, the next film that we got to see was one that I did have seen before. It was 1955's It Came From Beneath the Sea with the giant octopus attacking San Francisco.
The next one was, in fact, a film that's been reviewed on here, Earth vs. the Flying Saucers. This was the 8-minute version, and one thing I thought it was interesting that was not in this version was the saucer crashing into the Washington Monument.
Right. They had the scene where it crashed into the Capitol building, but like we said earlier, they just cut this stuff down to its bare minimum. The whole backstory of us launching the satellites into orbit was gone. The whole backstory of the aliens controlling different people, reading their minds and turning them into jelly, that wasn't there. It starts off with the spaceships landing in a research facility, laying waste to it, and then us trying to decide on how to fight it and inventing that sonic gun, and then the big scene at the end in Washington, D.C., and that was pretty much the entire film.
We then saw 20 Million Miles to Earth from 1957. Again, this was a film that I've seen bits and pieces of over the years, but definitely want to sit down and see the entire film. And then we moved on to some of the Sinbads. We saw 2 of the 4 chapters of 1958's Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, the Evil Magician segment and the Dragon's Lair segment.
It was hard to really notice any semblance of story if you hadn't seen these films before, since he only showed us even half of what's available on Super 8. But it was fun just to get to see the different scenes that was picked for these on a bigger screen, so it was a lot of fun to see that.
Next up was Mysterious Island from 1961, which of course is based on a Jules Verne tale. That again was just enough of a taste to pique my interest in seeing the entire film. Yeah,
it was fun to see the Nautilus in a non-Walt Disney film. After that, we got to see a couple of chapters of 1963's Jason and the Argonauts. We got to see Battle with Talos and the Golden Fleece. After that is one that Derek's going to find kind of funny. We saw 1966, 1 Million Years BC, which was the Hammer film, and I'm planning on also talking about this on our next episode of 1951 Downplace. But really, it was a much better version in 8mm than it was watching the entire version. Most of the interaction between the cavemen was cut out, and we just got to see Harryhausen's work mostly.
The next item he showed was interesting. It was Sinbad's Golden Voyage, but actually it was the making of that film from 1973. So there were little bits and pieces of interviews with Harryhausen. You got to see some of the concept art and the model building. Stuff
that you would see on bonus features on a DVD today. And I didn't even know that Super 8 had that. People were creating that type of content for Super 8 films, which I thought was really cool. And it was fun to see Harryhausen's workshop. And we wrapped up the Sinbad series with 1977 Sinbad in the Eye of the Tiger, which I haven't seen. And honestly, I've heard this is the weakest of the Sinbad. So. Yeah. Tom, who was running the festival, he basically said that, this was the weakest of the Sinbad films, and it was a good way to watch the film in this format to just see the good parts. We wrapped up the Harryhausen Festival with the 3-reel version of 1981's Clash of the Titans. So that lasted about 45 minutes. And again, it was a good distillation of the larger film. Yeah, a lot of Harry Hamlin's acting was left on the cutting room floor. It was fun to see that, and the whole evening lasted, 3.5 hours, I think it was, total? Close to that, yep. And we knew going into the HorrorHound Weekend that was going to happen. What we didn't know, and what Tom announced this night, was he was going to do another show on Saturday night. He brought a bunch of random films from his collection and invited us to come back at 8:30 on Saturday night, which I did because I just some of the films that he had talked about, and we'll cover here in a second, really intrigued me to see them in this format. And that started off with 1956's It Conquered the World with Lee Van Cleef and Peter Graves. And what was amazing is we get a little narration about Lee Van Cleef's character contacting the alien to come down, and then we immediately jump into his wife fighting the alien, and then Peter Graves going in and killing the general, and then we get the final scene with Lee Van Cleef and the flamethrower and the giant carrot. So it was really a quick overview of the film. I missed the first couple movies because I was busy doing some other things, but Kingdom of the Spiders was next from 1977. Yeah, she missed the Shat. They're doing his battle with the spiders, and it was, again, real cut down. We get to see the spiders attacking a calf at the beginning of the film. You get a little bit of the back and forth between the scientists about what's going on, and then we get the big scenes at the end where the spiders are attacking the town and capturing Shatner and his crew in the restaurant, and you get the classic scene at the end where the whole town is covered in spider webs. Maybe it's just as well I missed that. Next up was an episode of the TV show Johnny Sacco and the Flying Robot from 1967. Now, did you see those on TV when you were... I did not see those, and this was, the classic big Japanese monster type film, and it was an episode where Johnny Sacco gets a giant robot to control with a little wristwatch, and he tells the giant robot to fight the bad guys and everything, and it was probably 8 minutes long, but a lot of fun. The next film screen was one that we actually saw last October during one of the Fathom events, Bride of Frankenstein from 1935. So how did they manage to cut that down, Scott? Well, you start off in the film meeting Dr. Frankenstein and meeting the other doctor that has the little tiny king and the queen. And Dr. Pretorius? Yes, Dr. Pretorius, thank you. I was blanking on his name. So you get the scene where Dr. Pretorius and Dr. Frankenstein are partnering up to build a woman. Then you get immediately to the scene where the Frankenstein's monster attacks the girl with the lamb, gets shot at a couple times, and then boom, we're right into the climax of the film with the making of the woman, her showing up, rejecting the monster, and then the monster destroying the lab. So it was, again, this was another short one, maybe 7-8 minutes long.
Then we jump forward to Warriors from 1979, a film.
Out and play.
I still wasn't in the room yet, but even just hearing about this from Scott kind of makes me want to go see the movie again.
You know, we had the shooting at the beginning of the film. We have the warning going out to all the gangs to take out the Warriors. We have the group of the baseball players.
The baseball furies.
Yes. Attacking the Warriors. And then we immediately then go right to the end where you find out it wasn't the Warriors. And oops, spoiler alert there. But again, and I was surprised that films that were made so late, 1979, earlier we talked about Clash of the Titans, were still available in this format. After that one was probably one of the most funny ones we watched. A very politically incorrect film, a Little Rascals short from 1933 called The Kid from Borneo. And wow, this was quite fun to see. Basically, a couple of the Little Rascals are told that their uncle is coming to visit, and their uncle works in this traveling sideshow, or I think he actually owns it. And he writes on the paper, the letterhead has this picture of, stereotypical African tribesman from Borneo on there. And of course, the kids think that is their uncle. And so they go down to meet the uncle, and they see this guy instead. And of course, the kids are all talking about, how wild is he? Does he eat people? That kind of stuff. And it turns out that the way that the sideshow trains his tribesmen is they give him candy, and when he sees the candy, it's like, eat 'em up, yum, eat 'em up, yum. And of course, Buckwheat has some candy, and so he starts going, eat 'em up, yum, eat 'em up, yum. And all the kids go scrambling and hijinks ensue. But it was very funny to see this film.
From a different time, shall we say.
Very much so. Next was a classic, 1975's Jaws, distilled down to 8 minutes. All you get in this version was the shark attack at the beginning. You get the scene where they hire Quint to go after the shark. You're immediately now on the boat where they're out chumming. You see, we're going to need a bigger boat line come up. Then you got Richard Dreyfuss's character going over in the shark cage. Immediately then thereafter, the shark is eating Quint as he's fighting him off. And then right after that, we've got Roy Scheider throwing the scuba tank in the shark's mouth and him shooting it as the boat sinks. Literally, it seemed about that quick.
Now, I wish I'd had a chance to see this next one. It was 1953's I Changed My Sex, which is what Glen or Glenda was titled in the UK. That's another thing Tom mentioned. He actually gets quite a few of his films from the UK, as well as the United States. Yeah,
it was quite odd to see this. I've seen bits and pieces of this film before, and seeing Bela Lugosi kind of staring off in the famous stare of his, superimposed with women sort of in bondage on a couch, and then it goes right into the transvestite story of Glen or Glenda and what a transvestite is and what it isn't and everything. It was just odd, and it was, again, one of those that was cut down pretty short.
So we return back to something a little more near and dear to our listeners' hearts in MKR Radio, Destroy All Monsters from 1968.
Again, it was cut down quite a bit. We see the different monsters attacking different cities. You see that the aliens who are controlling them, the humans get the control back of the monsters. They send a monster from space to fight. And then you have a good 8 or 9 minutes of the big monsters fighting each other, which was great.
All you really need.
That's all you really need. None of this backstory. Let's just have the monsters fight. And was fun to see it in this format. So that was a lot of fun. Next up was another one, a classic film, 1973's The Exorcist, which was interesting to see in this format as well. You just get what you need to know about the story. Yeah. Nothing more. Yeah,
it's basically the Cliff Notes versions of all these films. I finally arrived in time to catch about half of Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein from 1948, which we saw last year, didn't we? Or 2 years ago?
We saw that at the Artcraft Theater, or at least I did a couple years ago, and then we have the Blu-ray here. And it was funny to kind of watch it because they don't make any mention of the Wolfman being with them. And for most of it, you don't see any of the transformations of the Wolfman, so you don't know that that's who that is if you're just watching this version. Then all of a sudden, at the end, when everybody is in the lab and they're all running around, he turns into the Wolfman finally, and you're like, oh, this is out of nowhere if you didn't know the story.
And then we went into the movie called Fistful of Yen, which is actually from the Kentucky Fried Movie from 1977. If you're not familiar with the Kentucky Fried Movie, it was the Zucker brothers' first film, I think.
Yes, directed by John Landis. And
it's just a pastiche of different movie parodies, I guess. For example, Fistful of Yen is basically a Hong Kong chopsaki spy type movie.
The film itself is fake trailers, fake TV shows. It's all rapid fire for most of the film until you get to a Fistful of Yen, which is like 15 minutes of the overall movie. And like Tracy said, it's this warrior kung fu Bruce Lee type character that's sent in to do a James Bond type of mission, and it's just got really trademark Zucker Brothers type of humor and everything in it. And this format just showed that part of the Kentucky Fried Movie and nothing else.
So we went from a very tongue-in-cheek type of movie, or two of them actually with Abbott and Costello, to 1953's War of the Worlds, which I hope Derek is going to cover on MKR someday.
If he doesn't, he should.
Now, we're assuming everyone's familiar with this, so again, it was just kind of cut down.
This is not the Tom Cruise version.
Oh, God, no. So it's, again, cut down to pretty much just the best scenes. I wish they had shown the first capsule unscrewing. I understand why it was cut for time, but I always enjoy that particular scene because it's so suspenseful. But they pretty much cut right to the tripods, which, of course, in this version are the floating tripods, laying waste to the army. And then we cut to the scene in the destroyed house with, I'm blanking on...
Dr. Forrester.
I should remember that.
Dr. Clayton Forrester.
Dr. Clayton Forrester and his love interest trying to get back out of the house after it's been destroyed. And, of course, there's a scene where all of a sudden you see the alien hand on her shoulder. Ah!
But
From there it cut right...
Cut right into the
church?
Well, it goes right into the city with the aliens laying waste to L.A. and then goes into the church. So it was just, like we said, it's like the Cliff Notes of War of the Worlds.
Next up was a movie I had just heard about called...
I had not heard of this film.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know much more than the title, which is Reptilicus from 1961. And I honestly don't know. I think it's a foreign film.
The main monster looked like a marionette. Because I know at one time I asked Tracy if it was Kukla Fran or Ollie that was attacking.
Yeah, it's like a snaky dragon kind of thing. But yeah, it was being manipulated in, as opposed to being stop motion, it was being manipulated in real time as if it were a marionette. So it was just kind of
And we're going to have to shoot it from close range or point blank.
Yeah, that was one of the lines. Just in case you didn't know what point blank and close range meant. So that one was pretty bad. That one...
It was better than the next one, though.
Oh, God.
Tom had a surprise for us. He had... Well, in 1970, before Sylvester Stallone did Rocky and before he did Death Race 2000, he was in a low-budget adult film called...
A Party with Kitty and Stud.
Right. And then after Rocky... He was the film was repackaged as The Italian Stallion, and he had the 17-minute cut down highlights of The Italian Stallion, which
highlights being a polite term.
One of the things Tom said when he was threading the film, he said there is so much pubic hair in this film that sometimes it jams the projector.
Yeah. This was my first and hopefully last experience with 70s era. It was supposed to be softcore, but if so, this was the hardest softcore I've ever seen. And yeah, it wasn't the sex scenes that bothered me so much, but there was some violence. I mean, he's slapping the girl around.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. If you have not seen this and you're interested in it, seek professional help. But after that, he let us kind of pick what we wanted to see from what he had left, and we got a really good palate cleanser. we got to see 1935's The Raven with Bela Lugosi and Boris Karloff, which I have not seen this film, and I want to see this film badly. It looked really good.
Yeah. Karloff's character was apparently a criminal fleeing who had escaped. I think he was a murderer, but he went to Bela Lugosi's character, who was a doctor and a plastic surgeon, and he wanted him to basically fix his face and make him more attractive so he wouldn't be recognized. Well, Lugosi is more a mad scientist than just a doctor in this film.
So he makes him uglier, which in his thinking makes Boris Karloff be more filled with rage and more willing to do basically Bella's bidding. And
he bribed him with, "I'll fix your face if you do what I want you to do." And from there we go into almost this Edgar Allan Poe-inspired storyline.
Of course, it's The Raven.
Yeah,
so,
but
there's the Pit and the Pendulum references
and walling people up, and so Bella, and were these again? We couldn't get a feel from this Super 8 version if these were people he already knew or if these were strangers. But he takes two couples, or was it a couple and two other men? It was a couple,
and we weren't really told who these people are, but I think the guy that was tied up in the Pit and the Pendulum was the father of one of the women or something. But like I said, we just got a taste of this film, and I do want to track it down and see it. Yeah,
it was so great to see Lugosi and Karloff together at the height of their careers in 1935. I mean, I could have just closed my eyes and just listened to both of them talk and would have enjoyed it. And then we wrapped the evening up with The Deadly Mantis from 1957.
A giant praying mantis defrosted out of a iceberg and attacks the world. Distilled down to 8 minutes.
Yep. And again, we've seen this. Was this an MST3K movie? Or have we just I remember seeing the full version somewhere sometime.
I think it is. I think it is on MST3K. Now, like we said, this was all put together by Tom Stockman, who is part of the We Are the Movie Geeks. And he does this around the Midwest. He can be found on Facebook if you do a search for him. A lot of fun. Would highly recommend if you get a chance, if he's coming anywhere near you, or if you live in the St. Louis area, to go check one of his shows out. Just if you've never seen this format, it was so much fun. You're getting the highlights. It's like watching SportsCenter for movies, where we're just going to show you the highlights of the film just to let you know what happened. You don't get to see the whole thing, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, we both really enjoyed it. So thanks, Derek, for letting us do this little guest segment, and we'll be back with more of the show right after this.
We'll make sure there's relevant information at the show notes over at monsterkidradio.net. And, of course, the show notes also appear on Facebook when the shows go live, and I start mentioning it on Facebook. We're on Facebook. We have both a page and a group. You can like the page and join the group. There's conversations happening there all the time. I'm blown away by the level of activity over there on Facebook. I hope just doing one show this week instead of two doesn't mean we're going to see a drop. But no, y'all wouldn't let me down, would you? Would you? I didn't think so. You guys and gals have been great, supporting the show on Facebook and giving us reviews in the iTunes store. It's been fantastic. I am touched by the outgoing of support that we've had for the podcast. If you want to get a hold of us, email us at monsterkidradio@gmail.com or call and leave us a voicemail at 503-479-5MKR. Maybe somebody can call in and let Scott know what Reptilicus is all about. It's kind of an infamous movie, and, might be something worth covering here on the show down the line, especially since it was just released by MGM on DVD in one of their Movies for You packs, 4 being the number 4. Anyways, for $5, they put out 2 of these DVDs, and Reptilicus is on one of these sets along with The Brain That Wouldn't Die, The Neanderthal Man, and The Amazing Transparent Man. I've got these in various editions here at the home, I believe, put out by Mill Creek. I haven't watched these DVDs yet, but I suspect I will be as I'm recovering from my gallbladder surgery. And actually, just for fun, I put a poll up in the Facebook group asking the listeners what they think I should be watching while I'm recovering. Right now, people are suggesting that I check out The Outer Limits. That seems to be great recovery television viewing. If I can get it on my Roku, I think I will. Although I'm also thinking I'm going to watch a lot of Night Gallery. I love me some Night Gallery, although I don't own it on disc yet. One other bit of business that I want to mention real quick. Thank you to every Monster Kid Radio listener who threw a vote to the 99W Drive-In for Honda's Project Drive-In. Basically, the film distributors are forcing everybody to go digital, and we knew this was impacting the smaller movie theaters, the non-chain, the mom and pops, the places that only have one screen, things like that. It's also affecting the drive-ins, and the drive-ins, they are a dying piece of Americana. We have 4 in Oregon, and I'm quite lucky, but I know a lot of people don't. Well, Honda put together this project where they were going to award 5 digital projection upgrades, installations, conversions, whatever it is they need to do to make it so that they can continue to show movies, since the distributors are only going to put out digital product from now on. The 99W was announced as one of the winners. We got the votes, and I know the Monster Kid Radio listeners helped to make that happen, so thank you for helping a drive-in out. Now, since the winners have been announced, Honda said they extended the voting. There are going to be 4 more winners, 4 more drive-ins are going to get the digital conversion. Head over to projectdrivein.com. Voting has been extended to September 21st. That's this upcoming Saturday. 4 more drive-in movie theaters are going to get a hand, courtesy of Honda, to get the digital projector set up. And, I mean, if you can help somebody out, if you can help a movie theater out, do so. You can vote, I believe, twice a day. Of course, there will be a link in the show notes. Thanks, everybody who listened this week. Thanks again to Scott and Tracey for contributing this episode. We're going to have Scott and Tracey back again for some other full episodes produced by them. And I've got some recordings already in the bag, just needing to have a little bit of editing done to them. And I've got maybe 2-3 weeks worth of content ready to go. Perhaps one of the things that I can do while I'm recovering from my surgery is just edit a show or 2. All updates about my surgery and car accident and everything else I'll probably talk about on Facebook, so you can find me over there. Let's wrap this up. Monster Kid Radio is a registered service mark of Monster Kid Radio LLC. All original content of Monster Kid Radio by Monster Kid Radio LLC is licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivations 3.0 Unported License. Thanks for listening. Sorry, only 1 show this week, and hopefully you'll have 2 shows next time around. Have a good rest of your week, ladies and gentlemen, and be kind to your gallbladder.